Hi, and welcome to the Momversation Club, the podcast born out of the idea that every mom needs a tribe. I'm Christina Streckmeyer.
And I'm Claire Strong. We're two mums just like you navigating the chaotic, challenging, and often really isolating world of motherhood.
You know, it's said it takes a village to raise a child, but in today's crazy world, we want to know, where the F is the village?
Yeah, it's a question that resonates with many of us who find ourselves trying to manage children, careers, all while maintaining our identities and often with a sense of isolation.
But we're here to remind you that you're not alone. The Momversation Club is your village, a place where you feel valued, appreciated, and understood.
We believe that by sharing our experiences, successes, and struggles, we can create a virtual village for all you amazing mums out there.
So join us every week for an honest, raw, relatable discussion about all aspects of being a mom, including the stuff you just can't talk about with other people.
So if you've ever asked yourself, where the F is the village? You found your tribe. Let's get into it.
And now a quick break in the Momversation to bring you a word from today's sponsor.
Sometimes being a mom can feel overwhelming. And being a mom of a child with special needs, well, that doesn't come with a manual. Or so we thought.
Today's sponsor is Flourishing Families, the annual special needs digital guide and online resource database from the Special Needs Resource Foundation and San Diego Family Magazine.
This one-stop shop provides a comprehensive resource list with access to over 1,000 options, including service providers, camps, therapists, advocates, and much more for families with disabilities in San Diego and Imperial County.
Flourishing Families also offers informative articles and helpful tips for parents just like us. Click the link in our show notes or visit snrfsd.org to explore these valuable resources today. Hey, Claire.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
I'm doing okay over here. It is going. I feel like we're in the thick of all of the things. What about you? How are you doing over there?
Yeah, I'm good. It's busy, isn't it, right now? It just feels busy. There's a lot going on. My kids are in the middle of Nutcracker rehearsals, school's kicking off. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah, 'tis the season, I guess. That's what they say at this time of year. But, I think that we are talking about something today that is going to be so good for all of us, because I think as much as we're talking about some of the stuff with kids, I'm looking forward to us chatting about this for me because this is a season where so much is going on that you're bound to run into this topic. So what are we talking about, Claire?
We are talking about how to help your kids handle disappointment. But you made a good point. Maybe we need to listen to this advice for ourselves too, because hey,
Totally.
being a mom and being a woman in general, we have a lot of disappointment to handle on a daily basis. So, well, listen, one of the reasons I wanted us to address this topic, because now my girls are in their teenage years, they are facing disappointment. Things aren't always really easy anymore. And especially for my eldest who has ADHD, she has to overcome a lot of obstacles. And what really got me thinking about this subject was a couple of months back, the girls were auditioning for roles in the Nutcracker Ballet, which they do every year. And even my youngest was so desperate to get the role of Clara, she's the lead role, I guess, in the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
And she's auditioned for it the last couple of years and hasn't got it. And she thought she was definitely going to get it this year. She's worked really hard. She's got a really good attitude. She's actually a really good technical ballet dancer as well. So she just thought, this is my time, Mom. And she came out of the audition. She was literally bouncing off the walls. She was so pleased with how it went. She said, Mom, I couldn't have had a better audition. They kept calling me back. I think I've definitely got it. And it came down to her and another girl. And she said, Mom, should I felt really bad for her, but the other girl, she kept messing up in the audition. So I think I've got it this time. And so she was totally, G'd up for getting the role of Clara. And then a few days after the audition, the emails came out, and oh my God, this is like trauma in itself. every 2 seconds, Eva's asking me, Mum, have you got the email yet? Can you check your email? And I'm like, no, I haven't got it yet. And then the email comes, it comes to me. So I have to open the bloody thing. And it says, congratulations. And I open it. I'm like, oh my God, please. Congratulations on your role, Eva, as the kissing doll. So she didn't get Clara. She got the kissing doll, which actually I won't go into great detail because I'm not assuming everyone knows about ballet and the Nutcracker, but the Kissing Doll is a solo, and she's basically a clockwork doll, a wooden doll, and it's actually very technical. And I think the reason they gave that to Eva is because she's technically a very good ballet dancer, but at the moment she didn't care about that. She was absolutely distraught, and as a mom, your heart just kind of sinks for them because I knew she'd put the work in, and she's got such a good attitude, and she was so excited, and then for her to be crushed in that moment, and she was asking herself things like, Mum, I don't know why, I don't understand, this is the third time I've gone for it and I've done everything they've asked of me. And it was so difficult, and as a mum, I felt totally helpless in that moment. All I could think to say was, you've done your best, darling, and for whatever reason, there's, the other role is meant for you this year, and the other role is going to be even better for you. And I tried to play the, pluses, and oh well, maybe the kissing doll is just more technical than Clara, and they thought that actually you were the better ballet dancer, and so that's why they gave it to you. But in that moment, she wasn't in that listening mode. She was just in the depths of disappointment. And so, I think I handled that situation fairly well. But then, I did, it got me thinking, surely there is a bit of a playbook here as to how us as parents can handle disappointment. And I'm going to go through some of the ways that child psychologists suggest that you handle disappointment.
Oh,
And
I'm
I'm sure,
so glad. I'm
listen,
so glad you're doing that because
listen,
I am listening to that story and I'm like, oh man, I can deeply relate to that feeling of being disappointed as a child and as someone going for those types of things. But I've never been on the other side where like you're not navigating it as you're like
yeah,
watching your child who you desperately want to be well and happy and thriving navigate like one of the hardest things because disappointment's like one of the hardest things out there and it
it is.
does
And,
it shapes you.
oh, it totally does. And oh, sorry, I'm just smashing my lip glass off the table. Bit of ASMR thrown in here for good measure. Although if it was ASMR, surely I'd be doing this the whole.
You always
So,
bring ASMR on here, and I think that you should like get into that. But anyways, going off
I am a
track.
little obsessed, although my kids would be so mortified, so they told me I cannot, but I do. It's my secret pleasure. Anyway, back on track. But the point with so here's the thing with disappointment. Obviously, as adults, like we know, disappointment just smacks you in the face, right, left, and center. It certainly has done for me in my adult life. I had a very like nice sheltered childhood and got into adulthood, and then it's like boom, and then boom again, and then that's kind of been a theme for me a little bit. So I am used to handling disappointment. However, as kids, they're not. And I just think it's really difficult to be on the other side of that because you can't live it for them. They're not your emotions ultimately, and they're not your, you cannot determine the outcome of their disappointment either. It is down to them. So I think as parents, all we can do is kind of sit back and listen and advise, which I'll go into detail a little bit more about what we can do as parents in a few minutes. But
Yeah.
um, you know, have you experienced that with your kids yet? I know your kids are younger, so and I do think it's more prevalent the older that they get.
You
But if
know,
that's something you've
yeah,
ever come across yet,
I'm listening to you, and all I can do is relate on a personal level to my own disappointment, like with
yeah,
things like that. But no, like I as a young kids, we've got like daily disappointments of like I really wanted mac and cheese for dinner, but we're having this other thing, and I'm pissed off about it. Um, I watch a lot of children's programming because I'm in that season. And I noticed that a lot of that children's programming is incorporating disappointment into their shows. And honestly, it helps me sometimes. Like, Not even
Yeah.
lying. Like there is a Miss Rachel who is like a YouTube show, and she's only on YouTube at the moment, and she does like a 30-minute to an hour show, and it's like learning and speech and things like that. And one of the things she does is she's like, it's okay if things go differently than you wanted them to. We can be flexible. And I have caught myself many of times saying, like, well, that didn't work out the way I thought it would. We can be flexible. Like, just talking to myself. But yeah, like, not too much as a mom just yet, just on a personal level, like, as you're talking about Eva's story, like I remember trying out for cheer and like, not getting it one year, even though I really thought I did well, and being so crushed as I was listening to that voice recording of like all the numbers that did make it, waiting for my number and it didn't show up. And I've always navigated disappointment with, okay, I'll do better next time. Like it really
Mm.
motivates me. My internal stuff, like my operation system doesn't understand that like that's supposed to be like a pause moment. It's like out of spite, I will do better than anything you've ever seen as my next move. Um, and that's just something I've come up with on my own that wasn't coached. But I would love to hear about like how am I supposed to handle this when it does come up, Claire? When it's like an actual big thing and not the mac and cheese situation. Like, what do I do?
Okay, so here's the thing. So this is from a parental point of view. So the research I did was specifically for us parents, how we can help our kids navigate disappointment. That said, I'm sure everything that applies to our kids can easily be applicable in our own lives
Yes.
too. And I do the same thing as you. I take everything I can from anything that like my kids have been taught when it comes to emotional intelligence and handling life in general. Okay, so I have my little notepad here. So bear with me, but these are basically four main areas of how we can help our child to navigate disappointment. First of all, it's really important that we validate what they're feeling. So, by doing that, here's how we can practically do that. Listen to their story, hear what they're saying, and make sure you are, first of all, in listening mode before you move on to the next stage, which I think, like, impulse, it's an impulse that you want to solve the problem for them. Hang off on that, first of all. So, number one, validate what they're feeling and listen. And, sometimes, and I think maybe we do it because we're just trying to make them feel less bad about the situation. But as parents, I think it's easy for us to come in and say, certainly I've done it before, oh, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. Well, actually, what child psychologists are saying is maybe don't use that approach because it's a big deal to them. Like I
Yeah.
could have gone in and said, to using Eva as the example, oh, Clara's not that great of a role anyway. This other role's far, far better. Now, I did mention that later on in the conversation, which maybe I shouldn't have even done that in the initial conversation, but that wasn't my first response. And so I guess that's what the experts are saying.
I
Even if
kind
it
of
doesn't sound like a big deal to us, it's a big deal to them. So you need to validate that in that moment, this is a huge deal.
I agree. I think if you think about you and I and how
Yeah.
we feel when we're hit with something, we just
Mhm.
want to be heard at that moment from our
I
spouse or
do.
our friend or our mother or whoever's listening. And, with my little ones, I often will repeat back what I'm hearing, which is something I learned in therapy. But like,
That's good.
oh man, I'm hearing that you're really upset that things have changed. It can be upsetting. Like, let's talk about how we can handle that. Like, having that, I hear you. And yeah, it is unfair or it is, something to be upset about. And I'm really sorry that that happened. I think that that's an important part of all of this is just feeling like your child is seen by you, that you understand their plight at the moment.
And us as mums, we can relate to that. It's not that we're far removed from that feeling of disappointment because and feeling not just disappointment, but the feeling that we need to be validated because many a time I'll call my husband during the day when something hasn't gone right, when something I feel has gone unfairly, that, maybe I've tried really hard at something and it's just not come off despite my best efforts. Um, and in that moment, I just want him to say, oh my God, I feel so bad for you. That's really bad. I'm sorry. I know how hard you worked. I just want to hear that. What I don't want to hear is, well, what are you going to do about it? You can you can either wallow in self-pity, or you can go and, I don't want to hear that in that moment. So I guess that's what the
Yeah.
experts are saying when we're dealing with our kids. Listen to them and validate what they're feeling at that time. So that's point number one.
Okay.
Point number two, which is a natural progression, I think, to the first point, is recognize and resist the impulse to fix it. Okay. So as parents, we do try and fix everything. So when Eva told me she hadn't got the role of Clara, my initial reaction was, you need to speak with your ballet teacher about it. Go into, not because I wanted the ballet teacher to change her mind. I respect that a ballet teacher has made the decision, but just because I was thinking, oh, well, speak with your ballet teacher, because then she'll give you feedback that you can take and work on for next time. That's why I was suggesting that. But I did fall foul to this next rule of resisting the urge to do that, because as a mum, all you're listening to or all you're seeing is your kid in a crumpled pile who's devastated about whatever it is, either, friendships broken down, or they haven't got something that they tried out for, or whatever it is, but you just want to fix it and to make them happy again. And so we've got to try and resist that, because point number three, you actually need to help them sit with their emotions, and tough emotions in particular.
Yeah.
So we've got to normalize negative emotions. So everyone is going to experience them. This is kind of the advice that I'm picking up from all the articles that I've read on this. So, we're all going to experience negative emotions. We're all going to experience disappointment to varying degrees. That's just kind of how life is for us. But focus on practical things like helping them breathe. If they're in the moment and they are totally hijacked by their emotions because they're so disappointed that something hasn't worked out, just focus on things that you can control and they can control, which an example of that would be breathing. But yeah, let them sit with it. And I've got to say, again, going back to this recent disappointment that my youngest daughter had, day one, like hour one, minute one, it was devastating. The next day, she was far less disappointed because she'd had that time to sit with it. And
Yeah.
then, a couple of days down the line, she was actually saying, Mum, I actually really like this role I've been given. And actually, I think the reason I was given it probably was because it's actually really hard, Mum. And I'm going to get to do it on point, which is when they're like dancing on the toes. And she said, and I wouldn't have been able to have danced the role of Clara on point. That was for, regular ballet shoes, like on flat, basically. And so because she'd had chance to sit with it, yes, initially it was awful, and she was in such a funk and so depressed and whatever for that evening. A couple of days in, she'd already been able to internalize it and turn it around to be an advantage. Now, I'm not saying every kid or every situation you're going to be able to turn it around to be a positive, but at least I'm thinking with my older daughter Christina, she was also disappointed that she didn't get the role in the Nutcracker that she'd auditioned for.
Yeah.
That she, instead of getting the lead of the Arabian dance, she got the supporting role, which I actually think is a great role for her. And again, she was devastated initially. But I wouldn't say necessarily that she's seeing it as an advantage that she didn't get the role. She still thinks she's still disappointed about it, but it's not eating her up. She can get on with life. So I think if your
Yeah.
kid can't turn it around to an advantage, at least it's going to be, it's going to subside to the point where they can deal. It's not going to ruin their life. Basically, they can deal with it and get on with it. So that's so.
Yeah.
Just to
I love that.
reiterate, yeah, yeah.
I think when we look at this, like as I'm listening to you talk about it,
Mhm.
there's the immediate of let's handle this issue right now, but we're also as parents teaching them on how to navigate that's later. Because
Mm,
if your urge is to fix it and you do in fact fix it, what did they learn? Like when things go wrong, call mom and she'll fix it, right?
yeah.
Or I have to complain loud enough or do this and I'll fix it. They're not learning how to navigate in the world, which can be challenging and be disappointing sometimes. And
Mhm.
our job as parents is to prepare these children to go live lives, full lives and be productive members of society. And so I know that I encounter a lot of adults in my adult world who have not learned this lesson, who do not know how to
Mm,
navigate disappointment. And you see it on the roads when people are feeling like they're in traffic too
God,
long, or,
awful.
people that are, not getting their way at the store and they like, freak out on people. Like there's just this missing link where someone didn't teach them that. Someone didn't teach them how to navigate when you're upset, and how to go about that in a way that's productive rather than a way that's destructive.
Yeah, and I really urge the temptation to, in this case that I'm discussing, talk to the dancing teacher about why the girls hadn't got the roles, because ultimately, I don't want to be that parent who's like, oh, why did Susie not get this role? She's an excellent dancer. I didn't want to be that person. But also, interestingly, Eva, who was really disappointed that she hadn't got the lead in the Nutcracker, I asked her a couple of days later, I said, are you going to speak to Miss Francine about why you didn't get it? Just so that you can, see how you can improve for next time. She said, you know what, Mum? She's like, no, I'm going to leave it. She said, because I don't want her thinking I'm being a spoilt brat. And actually, I'm really happy with this role, and I'm going to now do this role to my best ability and impress them, and maybe that will mean that I get the Clara lead next year. So I thought that was interesting. She came to that conclusion herself.
And now a quick break in the Momversation to bring you a word from today's sponsor.
Raise your hand if you love shopping for jeans. Well, if you're listening with a hand up, then you're in the minority, because for most of us, it's a nightmare.
Waist gaps, unclear sizing, fluorescent lights, unflattering fits. I am sweating just thinking about it. What if we could skip all of that and just have the perfect pair magically transported to us?
Well, that's where today's sponsor, Neems Jeans, comes in. This women-owned business was created by someone who understands the struggle and offers custom denim jeans made to your exact body measurements, delivered right to your door.
Neems Jeans gives you the perfect fit every time, guaranteed, and offers inclusive sizings for every body. Moms, you are one of a kind, and your jeans should be too. Visit neemsjeans.com and use code Momversation15 at checkout for 15% off your order.
That's NEEMSjeans.com and code Momversation15 for your special savings. So another thing that I think as parents we can do, and certainly the experts say that this is a good trick, offer to work with them through their feelings and to reframe things. So, for example, and I'm not saying necessarily we do this in the moment that they're having a meltdown, but
Sure.
when things calm down a little bit, okay, so what have you tried? Give them some power back. Okay, so have you tried this? What could we try? Is there something that maybe we could do together? What I will say is, when you've got teenagers, this type of thing, I would definitely say, do not come in with this right off the bat, because the last thing when they're in that state, because the massive emotions in a teenage body. So think about toddler emotions in a bigger body. That's what we're dealing with in the teenage years. So I know
Worse.
that
It's worse.
my 16-year-old would not think I was the best mom in the world if I came into a bedroom when she was desperately disappointed and in floods of tears. I'm saying, okay, so what can we do? What have you done? She'd be like, shut up and leave my room. So maybe give it a little time. But I also see the advantage in this. I see the merit in this, because you're actually trying to help them see, maybe give them power back, basically, because I guess the power's been, they've lost out on a situation, whatever that situation is, which has triggered the disappointment. And so suggest things that maybe they can control. So that's another point, but this is a big one, and I have to learn this one, because I read it when I was doing my research. I was like, God, I need to
Oh
practice what I
God.
preach.
Here we go.
Listen to
Here we
this.
go.
Don't insist on helping them if they don't want the help. Now, it's so difficult, because I want to help them. It's not that I necessarily want to do it for them, but I want to at least have established a path forward for them to pursue. But again, if they are feeling so bitterly disappointed that they're not in that mindset at that time, don't insist that you help them. If they say, I don't want your help now, you've got to back off, and you've got to let them navigate it on their own. So those are
Oh,
just well, four big things really, but 4 pointers on how we can help our kids manage disappointment.
I think the last one is probably the hardest one
Very
because,
hard.
especially when you're navigating people who are floundering, like not even just your teens, but like
Mhm.
people in your life who are coming at you with a problem, and you're like, I have a clear solution. Like they may not want to hear your solution at the moment. They may not want your help. They may not want to be directed by you for whatever reason. And it's hard when you have a path that you know is gonna help and they don't want to hear it. It's really hard to bite your tongue. Something I've done with family members who are in my life who are often floundering and like talking to me about said floundering, and I know I have a solution, is I'll say something like, do you want to vent right now? Or, because I do have some ideas of like what can be done about the situation, but I'm just here to listen if you want that. And like, I'll ask them, and usually they do want to hear the solution, but sometimes I just want to vent. Like, and they'll tell you if you ask. I imagine that would be useful with like a teen of like, hey, this is really disappointing. And like, I understand why you feel that way. It's day 2 now of this disappointment. And I know you're still mad. Do you want to vent about it, or can we come up with some solutions together? Like, what do you think will be best right now? Like, maybe that would
Yeah.
help.
And I think if you are parenting older kids, so teenagers who can vocalize more how they're feeling, my eldest will say to me, Mom, I don't want to talk to you right now. And it's very difficult for me to respect that because my gut reaction is to, well, but I want to help. You're upset and I don't like seeing you like this. But if she's saying to me she doesn't want to talk about it, I need to take that cue and physically remove myself from the situation. And I then need to leave that situation alone until she's in the frame of mind where either I can approach the subject again, or better still, she comes at me with it. But I guess, the first point of validating what they're feeling and listening to that person in that moment, we're talking about this in the context of our kids right now, but we can definitely apply this in all areas of our lives, whether it's with our
Absolutely.
partners, parents, friends. Because so the funny thing is, the other day, my husband started a new job. He's in the same company, but started a new role. He's traveling a lot more now. So I'm single parenting it more often, which I've done before. So we're good. We can still do it.
You're talented.
I'm not panicking. But the point was, he was at the airport coming home, and he'd called me, and he was in the venting stage, and I was offering solutions. And this is a bit embarrassing to admit, but my 13-year-old was in the car with me, and she muted the call, and she went, Mum, she was like, he doesn't want your solutions right now. He wants you to listen to him. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, what a great point.
Maybe Eva should be a marriage counselor.
I'm serious. He's my counselor. I was like, oh my God, like, why am I not thinking of this already? So I unmuted the call, and they just went, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, that's really bad. I'm so sorry. So because my 13-year-old had reminded me I needed to be in the listening stage. But it's that, I think we can get a sense from whoever it is we're dealing with, whether they are in a state where it's that venting stage. I think it's quite obvious. If they're irate, if they're upset, it's probably not the situation, not the time for us to be offering a multitude of solutions right there and then.
One also, like when I think about this feeling and when I'm taking it to not just like my children but other people, something that I have to remember is I have my own like bias and notions about what someone else's upset means for me. And it can make me deeply uncomfortable when someone's upset. Like, even if they're not yelling or screaming, like if I just feel the tension in the air of someone being upset, I immediately will want to go in and fix that so that I can feel more comfortable with myself because of my own stuff. And I think a lot of people have like their own past and their own stuff that they bring into their parenting. And so if you find that you're like, feeling that like, oh, I gotta fix, like, do I actually? Is like the question to ask yourself. Am I fixing it for me to feel more comfortable, or is it for them? And sometimes people just need to be mad. My husband, I've been learning this a lot. My husband grew up in a household where it was totally fine to be angry. like people would yell sometimes, they might kick a tire, like they might throw something, and it didn't mean anything except for I am mad. Like, like the emotion charts, like that person's face is this way, so that means they're mad. Like he just was open about his emotions. And when I came into the relationship, being mad meant something different to me. And so I had to something more ominous. Yeah. And so I would feel this urge to like fix every mad. And like when I sat with it for over the last few years of us being married, I realized sometimes he's just mad. And like he just needs to be mad for a minute and then he'll not be mad in a second. And a lot of that's in traffic because my man cannot handle traffic. I am much more easygoing. I'm like, you go. No, you go. Like I am like that person on the road. And my husband's like, ah.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe because they are related, aren't they? Maybe it's something to do with there's something that's been passed down. Because
yeah. But it's funny because I'll be short in other spaces that he would never be short in. So we kind of balance each other out. But sometimes, sometimes I'm pissy and there's nothing you can do to fix it. There's nothing that anyone can do. I'm just kind of short today. And it's the same thing for other people. And when you're talking about these teens, sometimes they're just going to be disappointed and they might have several days. And depending on the size of the disappointment, it might be ongoing for a while. As a parent, we keep an eye on these tips. And we make sure we're keeping an eye on it to make sure it's not navigating into a depression. But I think that you let them feel their feelings so that they know they can.
Yeah, and I wish I'd have known these coping techniques when the kids were younger, actually. I wish I'd have taken the time to research them because here's the thing. I mean, we know as mums and adults, life doesn't get easier. They're going to be experiencing bigger and more potentially significant disappointments because that is just how life is. I mean, God, it's stressing me to think about it, but in a couple of years, Sophia will be, graduating high school and going off and doing her next thing. But so that's a whole new thing. And I think we'll dedicate a particular episode to that.
But you can't be the mom that's like, excuse me, why didn't Sophia get that job? I need to know.
Yeah. So here's another thing that this is the space we're navigating right now. So Sophia, my eldest, she's applied for a couple of part-time jobs and she hasn't heard back yet. And she's chased up with them. She's gone physically into the store and they love her. And I think they're just busy, or maybe they just don't have a spot right now for her. But she, I'm having to, from a distance, keep an eye on how she's handling this situation because I don't want her to be crushed that the 2 jobs she's applied for, she hasn't got. Luckily, she seems to be taking it in a stride and she's not crying that, she hasn't been hired by these 2 people. But I've got to say in that situation, I'm encouraging her. So I am giving her suggestions. So, okay, so when was the last time you spoke with these people? Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks. Why don't you email them and just follow up and say, hi, I'm just checking in. I would obviously still love to work for you. Just letting you know I'm available and whatever it may be. So I am giving her some tips, but then she is doing the groundwork. I'm not walking into Starbucks and saying, hi, my daughter would like a job and can you hire her? She is going into Starbucks or wherever it may be and with her resume and introducing herself. So,
but that's happening somewhere because there are moms who cannot handle that at all.
Totally. And I A, don't want to be that person, but B, I think it's incredibly important to be confident enough to speak to people, particularly in person. And so I've always encouraged my girls, if they're, luckily Sophia's very naturally outgoing, but and Eva is as well, but certainly with adults, Eva, I think, would sometimes prefer me to start the conversation, then she will kind of join in. But I'm not forceful, but I strongly encourage them to, for example, if we're at a restaurant and Eva, Sophia would just do it herself, so I don't need to worry about her. But say Eva, she needs something, maybe some sauce or whatever. I don't ask the server for sauce on Eva's behalf. I will say to Eva, oh, okay, well, just go and ask the server then. Or when the server comes over, get their attention. And so she will advocate for herself, because I do think that that's a really important skill that we need to teach our kids. And if we're jumping in every time and trying to, facilitate a path for them or open the door for them, I think we're doing them a disservice a lot of the times, because then they just don't have the confidence within themselves to actually instigate a situation, whether it be a discussion around a job or an opportunity or a friendship even. We need them to be confident in their own skin so that they can start a conversation with somebody. So I definitely don't want to be that mum that's jumping in and demanding someone hires my kid.
I love that. Well, Claire, I am so thankful that you've done the groundwork for this, because I know that I will be using these tips moving forward. And if you are a mom listening or parent listening and you have navigated disappointment with your child and you have some tips to offer, or maybe this podcast has hit you in the right spot, let us know. Like, give us a message on one of our social media channels, email us. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of us, but we always love to hear from you guys. So if this has been helpful, please tell us, and we will take that feedback and share it on social. And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Momversation Club.
And if you've enjoyed today's show, which we hope you have, then please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave us a review. Your support helps us to reach even more mums out there and build a stronger village.
Until next time, bye.